Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. What is the pettiest thing you've seen someone fired for? Oh, I have another one. This was a buddy of mine. Incredibly talented software developer, but a bit of a joker. My boss, who was way too serious, did not like him too much because of that. So, we have been asking for a few months for a code repository because we had to work with shared folders, and as any developer will tell you, that is an absolutely garbage idea. Before a particular part of the project, this buddy of mine took him upon himself to configure the repository on a machine that we used for backup. It took him about an hour, which was on his lunchtime, not on company time, and from then on, we had a proper development environment with SVN. He was fired for insubordination, for doing something beneficial to the company and crucial to the project, on his own time. I was dismissed from a firm after 2 days because the guy who hired me didn't like the hockey team t-shirt I had on. Ended up taking the firm to court and won a large settlement. Stupid kid. He ended up getting fired, saw on his LinkedIn page. I actually was fired yesterday from my pizzeria after 5 years because I asked for 2 days off for a family event and a surprise day with my girlfriend. Obviously just said family event. I came back every summer from school and they would ask me if I could come back and help. I always did because I love the customers. After I was told no, I ended up trying to switch with someone else like we normally would do. My boss found out, didn't like it, and fired me after 5 years. Kinda dumbfounded to be honest. This reminded me of the time I asked for a day off to pick up my then boyfriend from the airport, which was about an hour away. I wanted the day so I could spend some time with him since he'd be gone for a while. She gave me the third degree, wanting to know why I needed to pick him up and why he was traveling. When she found out it was for work, she wanted information on the company and what he did with them and why they weren't located in the same state we were. It was very odd. Like, she didn't believe that was really the reason I was trying to use my earned PTO. I was following company guidelines for requesting time off. There really was no reason to lie about why. This was my first full-time job, and I just assumed that's what happened when you asked for time off. Turns out, she was just a bee. Found out from my stepmom, who worked there after I did, under a different department and manager, that she was fired. Don't know the reason, but I wasn't surprised. 2 girls on the very low end of the totem pole, like not even making a living wage servicing positions. One is a spiteful bee who barely does her job and takes too many days off. We'll call her Tiffany. One is a really sweet hard worker. We'll call her Mary. Tiffany and her best friend co-worker Stephanie are constantly talking S about Mary, causing drama that keeps trickling up to middle management. One day Mary is in the bathroom in a stall and overhears the other two talking S about her behind her back again. She ends up in her manager's office in tears. It goes up the ladder to the owners. The owners decide that this needs to stop, and the best way to do that? They fire Mary. One of my coworkers went on vacation and her flight back was delayed, making her late for work when she eventually got back. They essentially forced her to put in her 2 weeks on the spot. A week later, when she was too upset to go to her goodbye lunch held by her boss, she was told that day was her last day for not being a team player. My friend was fired on the second week of work because an apartment building in his complex was on fire and he had no way of leaving because of the fire trucks blocking everything. He sent pictures to his boss, and when he showed up, they fired him for being late during the probationary period. I saw someone get fired because they had alcohol at work. It was a gift from a vendor and they just had it in their drawer still sealed. All our sales team would receive wine, beer, liquor as gifts from vendors, and some had it displayed in their office. Obviously, they just didn't like this person. I was fired because I was bringing the morale of the team down by taking 1.5-hour lunches every day. Okay, except that I was taking longer lunches to take my son to a medical treatment he was going through at the time. That was well agreed on by my boss beforehand. I was coming in an hour earlier every day to compensate, as agreed. However, I'm glad to be honest. My boss was a huge D with no leadership skills or a clear vision of the project. Guy got fired because he finally got his degree in engineering and wanted more responsibility and pay. Managers threw him in a role purposefully built for him to fail without support and training. They gave him neither. Fired him when S spiraled out of control. Caused a rift between the team and management. Over half of the team left within a year, including me. I used to work at a Chili's restaurant, and we used to have to roll silverware after each shift. 50 silverware rolled in napkins. No one liked to do it. Well, one day, all of the servers got called into the dry storage area. The manager had found a tray of silverware that someone had hidden so we wouldn't have to roll any. I forgot what the ultimatum was, but the manager was going to take it out on all of us if someone didn't confess. Finally, one guy stepped forward. I still don't think he did it, but he took the blame and was promptly fired. I was fired from Subway when I was 19. The dressing and sauces come in these big plastic bags which you cut a small hole in and pour into the bottles. When you're done, you put the bag and its remnants in the fridge for the next fill-up. One day before my shift, the owner brought me in the office and him and his brother had 3 half-full bags of dressing. They asked me if I threw them away instead of putting them back in the fridge. I said no. He had no clue who it was, to be honest. They kept accusing me of it and said we could watch the tapes to find out, so I said, fine, watch the tapes. They had no tapes. They kept persisting that I did it, and when I finally just said, I don't know who it was, but my shift is starting, they said they needed to know if any more bags were thrown away because they were taking it out of my check. I told them, you're not doing that. They told me to leave my shirt and apron, and I was being terminated. I went home and told my dad, whose first response was, they fished through the trash for these bags and are gonna serve it to the customers? So he called them and threatened to contact the Board of Health. They apologized profusely, and I went the next day and got my last check. I'm 90% sure in Massachusetts, to terminate someone, you have to hand them their final paycheck at the moment of termination. Either way, F Subway. Happened to me in an internship. You talked to my wife yesterday. She said you're cute. Get your stuff and F off. Well, okay. I'm 16 and your wife is like 50. But more free time until summer holidays end. Not gonna argue with you. Pretty young woman. She looked like Anne Hathaway with a baby who just managed to move into her own apartment and was going to collect at the same time, was exhausted, and fell asleep at the computer for like 5 minutes while doing a monotonous task. She wasn't given a warning, she wasn't even fired. Instead, when she left for the day, the manager, an ugly fat woman, decided to call the temp company and tell them not to send her back the next day. Of course, the temp company failed to tell her, so I got to see the awkward exchange the next day of the manager telling the young woman that the temp company should have contacted her and that she should go home and call the temp company. The girl didn't have a car and had to call her mom at work to come pick her up. One big regret I have is seeing her waiting for her ride and ignoring my gut instinct to take a bunch of cash out of the ATM and give it to her. I doubt she was able to stay in her apartment without the job. Poor kid. Had a friend who worked for steel fabricators as an apprentice. However, he had decided that he was better suited to a future in the Navy. He had been given a start date for basic training, and around 2 months before, he had to hit the emergency stop button on his steel press because it had loaded in the steel incorrectly. That's why the emergency stop button exists. Afterwards, he would have to take some time out to reset the machine and record the incident. Anyway, someone had blabbed to his management that he was leaving to go join the Navy a few months later. So they sacked him for what they found was a disregard for personal safety, because he had to stop his machine. I had worked as a leasing consultant for a very well-known apartment rental company 12 years ago. My schedule start time changed daily/weekly, and it was not uncommon to work 9 days in a row, so it could be exhausting. The office switched to using a fingerprint punch-in clock when you start your shift, and if you missed it, you had to fill out a time card sheet. So I missed a punch-in one morning and filled out a sheet a few days later. I wrote my start time as 8 o'clock, but it was really 9 o'clock, so the assistant manager called me asking about it the day before we put in our time cards for pay, and I said, my mistake. It was in fact 9. Let me know if you need me to come into the office and correct it. She said no problem. 2 hours later, she calls me again, but sounds strange and asks why I wrote down 8 o'clock. I said I was confused because the rest of the week had been 8 o'clock, but again, no problem if you need me to correct it. I was told, no, that is fine. Turns out the manager was on the other line, who hated me, and they tried to get me to say something that would fire me. I did not, however, I was fired for trying to steal 1 hour of pay. After I got fired, I filed for unemployment and actually got it because when the unemployment called the manager to get her story, she never returned the call. Jump to me at a new job 2 months later, and I get a court notice that my old boss and company is taking me to unemployment insurance court because they want to dispute the 1 month I collected unemployment. So I go, and they have a corporate lawyer, the HR person, the assistant manager, and manager against me. We sit in front of a judge who hears our case, and I provide my side of the story showing how much the start times change, etc. They provide their side, and the judge goes, okay, so the employee was fired for taking 1 extra hour of pay? I interject and say, Your Honor, I never received the pay for that hour. He asks, what do I mean? I tell him the problem was caught before the timesheet went in. He rubs his face and says, so why are we even here? My old boss says, because he tried to steal an hour. The judge goes, I heard enough. You will get my judgment via letter. This session is over. He ruled in my favor, so I got to keep that 1 month of pay, and the money they wasted on the lawyer, the HR women, and getting people to cover that property while the managers had to go to court probably cost more than the money they were fighting me for. F them. Thank you for watching. Guys, thank you for all the support and likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.